Welcome to the show where truth takes the mic, where the world spins fast, but we hold it tight. This is the Howie Silbiger Show on True Talk Radio, where the real ones go. Oh, politics, passion, the news of the day, no filter, no fluff, just the Silbiger way. So buckle up tight, let the debates flow. This is your hour, the Howie Silbiger Show. Silbiger Show. Silbiger Show. Politics, passion, the news of the day, no filter, no fluff, just the Silbiger way. So buckle up tight, let the debates flow. This is your hour, the Howie Silbiger Show.
And welcome to the program. My name is Howie Silbiger, and it is a pleasure to be with you here tonight on this beautiful Sunday night, right here on the True Talk Radio Network. TrueTalkRadio.com is the site, the official site of the Howie Silbiger Show on the True Talk Radio Network. Feel free to visit us at TrueTalkRadio.com. And of course, for all the latest news, latest Jewish news at least, you could visit MontrealJewishNews.com. MontrealJewishNews.com is our official sponsor. It is a sister site of True Talk Radio. Feel free to visit it. I am the editor-in-chief at Montreal Jewish News, and you could follow all the latest. So if we're not on the air, if we're not talking about something right here on the show, you will be able to read about it on MontrealJewishNews.com. So feel free to check that site out, MontrealJewishNews.com. So a lot has happened in the last couple of days, and I'd like to talk about it. I'd like to discuss it with you. You could feel free to call in. The number to call is 1-877-669-1292. That's 1-877-669-1292. It's the number to call to get in on the conversation here on the Howie Silbiger Show, right here on the True Talk Radio Network. So let's start off with the rally that happened in Toronto today. Now, normally I don't talk about stuff that happens in Toronto because it's a Montreal show, so I try not to talk about stuff happening in Toronto. But I think it's important to understand that the Canadian Prime Minister got up earlier last week, the middle of last week, and gave a speech at Holy Blossom Temple in Toronto. And what he said in that speech should not shock anybody because we know it's not true. So what he said in that speech was that he believed that Canada has failed the Jewish community. That part was true. That Canada's failed the Jewish community, the Canadian government, particularly the Liberal government of Canada, has failed the Jewish community, and it's time for them to combat anti-Jewism. And he said specifically, he pointed out synagogues being shot at, people being attacked in the street, students on campus not being allowed to be students, Jewish students can't be Jewish on campus. He pointed to all these things and said, this is unacceptable, it's un-Canadian, and it has to be stopped, and we have to do something to stop it. And, the government, the Liberal government, of course, allowed this to happen on their watch. They allowed the Jew hatred to grow in this country without trying to stop it. They allowed rallies, anti-Israel, allegedly anti-Israel rallies in Toronto, which turned into anti-Jewish rallies calling for globalizing the Intifada, which generally means the indiscriminate killing of Jews. They allowed that to be called at rallies in Toronto. They allowed people to be attacked in Toronto, and they didn't do anything, nothing at all, to try to curb the rhetoric, to try to stop the hatred. And of course, if the government stands back and allows it to happen, inaction allows things to grow. Inaction is compliance. Inaction means we don't care. And that's basically what the Liberal government said. We saw over the course of years that the Liberal government was very quick to get out and condemn Israel when they felt that Israel had overstepped its democratic rights, but was very, very, very hesitant to condemn people standing in the streets and calling for the killing of Jews, hanging effigies of Jews in their rallies, calling for the destruction of Israel, calling for the destruction of Canada. That was okay. That was freedom of speech. That was a fair political comment. Calling for the Intifada, the globalization of the Intifada. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I know a lot of people don't read anymore and they get all their news from TikTok. So for those of you that get your news from TikTok and don't read anymore, why are you watching the show? Not just joking. For those of you who get your news from TikTok and don't read anymore, the Intifada happened twice in Israel, 2 times. And both times the Intifada was the indiscriminate killing of Jews to make a political point. The Palestinian Liberation Organization under Yasser Arafat decided that the best way to fight Israel is to kill its citizens. So instead of going after government officials, going after soldiers, which would be a legitimate way to fight a country that you felt was oppressing you, instead of doing that, the PLO decided to bomb buses, bomb coffee shops, bomb pizzerias, and attack Jews on the street, kill them indiscriminately. They called it the Intifada, the popular uprising. That's what they called it, resistance. And they did it twice. And both times it was pre-planned, and both times they knew what they were going to do and when they were going to do it. And both times they killed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Jews, innocent men, women, and children, war crimes, terrorism. And they did it to prove a point, to try to force the Israeli government to make concessions for the so-called Palestinian cause. This is why they did it. So allowing people to call for the globalization of the Intifada, which Canada did for years, they allowed people to stand in the street, and they're still standing in the street calling for the globalization of the Intifada, means that they want to replicate those attacks on Jews in Israel in North America, in Canada. Which means that the boy who was attacked last week, we spoke about this last week on the show, the boy who was attacked last week is a victim of the globalization of the Intifada. The firebombing at the synagogue yesterday was a globalization of the Intifada. Every attack on the Jewish community is a globalization of the Intifada. Because the Intifada wasn't political. It was attack any Jew on the street and kill, maim, injure, do whatever you have to do to any Jew on the street. It didn't have to be an Israeli soldier. It didn't have to be an Israeli. Any Jew you saw on the street, attack him, kill him. And that's what they're doing in Canada. That's what they're doing. They're globalizing the Intifada. So the Temple Emmanuel was bombed just the other day, on Friday. It was bombed. A man walked to the back of the synagogue, broke a window, and threw a bomb into the building. His intention was to destroy the building to attack Jews, not Israelis, Jews. Think about it for a second. And all this talk about protesting Israel, and all this talk about genocide in Gaza, and all this talk about standing and resisting against the oppressive regime of the Israelis, in all this talk, has anyone attacked the Israeli embassy or the Israeli consulate? Not that we know of. Has anyone attacked the consul general? Not that we know of. Has anyone attacked the security of a consul general? Not that we know of. A visiting Israeli diplomat? Not that we know of. What has been attacked has been religious people praying at synagogue, has been Jewish students who are wearing identifiably Jewish garments, and has been Jewish kids, school children, walking home from school. That's who has been attacked. Some of the places that were attacked are not necessarily Zionist places. They don't necessarily support the state of Israel. Yet they were attacked. Why were they attacked? Not because they're ardent Zionists, not because they're flying the Israeli flag, not because they are pretending that they're Israelis and they want to do something, not because they made any statement that they want to commit any harm upon anybody. They were attacked solely, 100%, because they were Jewish, period. There was no other reason to attack anybody in North America. You're not convincing Israel to do anything by attacking North American Jews or European Jews. Now, the anti-Jewish people, people call them Hamas supporters, I'm going to call them anti-Jewish people. The anti-Jewish people who are protesting on the streets in Montreal and Toronto and around the world, these people are very clear about what they want. They're very clear when they speak. But the world is choosing not to listen to what they're saying. When people in Sydney, Australia, 10,000, more than 10,000 people protesting in Sydney, Australia, started chanting, "Gaz the Jews, Gaz the Jews," you understood extremely clearly what they were calling for. It's not a secret. It's not a when someone says "Gaz the Jews," we know exactly what they're talking about. I don't have to explain what they're talking about. Every single person watching the show, listening to the show, Jewish or not Jewish, understands what the term "Gaz the Jews" means. And if you don't understand what the term "Gaz the Jews" means, then you've been living under a rock for the last 50 years. So when people are standing on the street yelling "Gaz the Jews," they're being extremely clear on what they want to happen, on what they expect to happen, what they really wish would happen. Now, you could twist this any way you want, but when people yell "Gaz the Jews," I don't see that as an anti-Israel statement. I see that as an anti-Jewish statement. And I see that as something government should be very worried about. If you want to have a country which allows people to live freely, you can't allow a minority of your citizenship to get into the streets and yell "Gaz the Jews," or globalize the Intifada, or hang Jews in effigy. You can't allow that to happen. The second you allow that to happen, you are saying that there is one subsect of citizenship, one segment of your citizenship, which isn't considered equal. Because if we got up in white hoods and we said "burn the blacks," or we held up signs that said "murder the Muslims," there would be outrage beyond belief. There would be riots in the streets. The government would be condemning it day after day after day. Everybody involved in those protests would be arrested. Every single person who ever uttered a word would be arrested. Yet when it comes to the Jews, there seems to be a double standard. When it comes to the Jews, there seems to be a blinder put on politicians, a blinder put on law enforcement. That says it's okay. Jewish life is expendable. We could afford to tell the Jews that, we could afford to say "kill the Jews." Maybe we even agree with it. It doesn't make any sense as to why, when you say "kill the Jews" publicly, it's okay. Nobody cares. Maybe the Jew hatred is that deeply embedded in society that we're at a point in time, and not too far after the Holocaust. I mean, we're less than 100 years after the Holocaust, but maybe we've gotten to a point in time where the Jew hatred has built up so ubiquitously in society that everybody just agrees with it. Yeah, sure. The Jews. Let's kill the Jews. Watch YouTube or check out TikTok sometime. And anytime anyone posts anything remotely Jewish, there's three comments that come up all the time. Somebody's going to post "Free Palestine," and someone's going to post, 2,000 years. You've been waiting 2,000 years for this. It was promised to you 3,000 years ago. This kind of hatred doesn't come from nowhere. This kind of hatred doesn't come from a void. This kind of hatred is passed down from generation to generation. It's usually kept in the undercurrent, but when governments are lax and governments don't limit speech, and I'm not saying censor people, I'm just saying limit hate speech, limit speech that promotes the hatred of people. When governments don't do that, then you run into problems like we're facing now, like the Jewish community is facing in Canada, like Jewish communities facing in the States, like Jewish communities facing in Europe. You run into these problems where people are going, freedom of speech, I could say whatever I want. And sure, you can. You could say whatever you want within reason. There should always be limits. You can't have a society where there's no rules. You can't have a society where you could do whatever you want, say whatever you want. That would be chaos. It would be anarchy. You can't do that. There's no government, there's no society in the world that's truly democratic. When you think about a democratic society, you think about a society with laws, with rules, with a constitution that gives you rights, inalienable rights to do this, to do that. That's democracy. But when you also think about democracy, you think about limits to democracy. Because if you let everybody run rampant, we'd all be killing and eating each other, and that wouldn't be right. That wouldn't be democratic. That wouldn't be a fun place to live. That would be horrific. And allowing people bare freedoms to do anything you want. You want to see what happens that? Watch the movie The Purge, where people, there are no laws. Take the laws away, and you see what happens. Read the book Lord of the Flies. Sorry, too many Lord of the books. Read the book Lord of the Flies. You see what happens when society doesn't have limits. So every society needs limits, and the limits you should be setting are limits to protect the people living in society. Because everyone's always looking for a scapegoat. Everyone's always looking for a reason something happened. Oh, the economy crashes. Must be those Jews. They control the economy. Isn't it amazing, though? I find it absolutely mind-blowingly amazing that the Jews could be billionaires because they control Hollywood, they control the government, they control the banks, they control everything. And at the same time, the Jews could be on welfare, dregs of society, who are eating up the resources from other poor people. And the contrast between people who say all Jews are rich and Jews are poor and eating up the society, they don't even see, the hypocrisy of the whole thing doesn't even come close in people's minds. They don't even think about the hypocrisy because they use whichever narrative fits their story better. So if they want to put down the Haredim, which if you watch online, they do all the time. They want to put down the Haredim. They say, oh, look at them, 10 kids, 12 kids. They're a scourge on society. They eat the resources of welfare. They eat welfare resources. Every one of them is on welfare. 90% of the Haredim community, I don't know if that's true. I don't care. It's irrelevant. 90% they pay taxes the same way we pay taxes. But anyway, 90% of the Haredim community is on welfare, they'll tell you. And then the next breath, they'll tell you that all Jews are rich and they control Hollywood and they own the banks. So which one is it? You can't be poor and rich at the same time. You can't be good and bad at the same time. Which one is it? But the Jew is never good. Nobody ever says the Jew is good. Oh, thank God for the Jew. We never hear that, even though Jews have been responsible for many inventions that have saved billions of lives over the years. But we don't get credit for anything. All we do is get attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked. And where's the Jewish leadership? And this part of the narrative always gets me into trouble. And I'm fairly sure I've lost a few jobs or didn't get a few jobs because I say this out loud. But somebody has to do it. And I don't mind taking the sacrifice. I mind taking the hit to be honest. Because I think honesty is the only way to go. I don't believe in hiding the way I feel for anyone. I don't believe that I should temper my speech. Because I think what I talk about is very important, and I think it is important that we understand that we are living in a society that wants us gone. We are living in a society that wouldn't mind if every single Jewish person died. I said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. If we took a look, if we paid attention to every person who was standing in the street, tens of thousands of people standing in the street, yelling to globalize the Intifada, and then we went to the grocery store and looked around and recognized some of those people, how safe would you feel in the grocery store with those people? These are your neighbors. These are your friends. These are the people you see on the bus, people you see on the subways, people you see in the streets downtown. These are the people you shop with, people you go to the doctor's office with. These are the people that you are around. You're living in the city. These are the people of the city. And these people stood in the street and yelled globalized Intifada, which was directly calling for the death of Jews. How safe do Jews feel? But the government doesn't care about that because you have the Jewish MPs, the Jewish members of parliament, and the Jewish members of the National Assembly that pride themselves on being Jewish, and standing up for the Jewish community, when in fact all they do is hug the Jew-hating government, the government that has been apathetic and hasn't helped Jews at all. And all they do is hug and try to keep their jobs and try to keep their ministerial positions, try to get on the cabinet of these governments. It's sickening when you think about it. Now, these people individually are very nice people. I know all of them, and they're very extremely nice people. But the fact that they haven't left their parties, the fact that they haven't done anything constructive to help the community is sickening. And the fact that the Jewish community keeps voting them in time and time and time again is also sickening. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into Canadian politics because I think it's irrelevant. But I do believe that an alternative should be looked for in all levels of Canadian government. We need government. We need leaders in government. We need people in government who will stand up, demand, and force the government to act. We need people, activist leaders, who will stand up and will protest and will lobby and will be there for the Jewish community. Not just people who pay lip service and then move on with their lives. Not just people who will take a look at the situation and try to cover up the wrongdoings of their bosses. We don't need those kind of people in power. We really don't. And I'm not saying that I want people to lose their jobs, but unfortunately in politics, that's what happens. If you don't protect your people will not vote for you. And right now, I don't see any level of government at all, protecting the Jewish community. I see lip service being presented by the federal government. The Prime Minister presenting lip service last week, saying, "Oh, we know how we're going to solve the Jewish problem by giving the mandate to solve the problem to the hate committee, which existed for the last 3 years and hasn't solved the problem." So we're running around in a merry-go-round, really. Let's take a problem that has existed for years, give it to a committee that existed for years, who hasn't solved the problem, and tell them they have to solve the problem. Well, fool me once, I'm a fool. It's mind-blowingly unbelievable that the federal government, thinks we're that stupid. It's mind-blowing that the federal government believes that we believe that they care. If they cared, they would have done something years ago. The Liberals have been in power for years, for decades. For over a decade. They've done nothing to help. They've only helped hurt the Jewish community. And now we're supposed to believe that they're going to help the Jewish community? And all this Jew hatred, well, where is it leading us to? How is anyone winning here? We have people fleeing the province. Jews are fleeing the province as soon as they could get out, as soon as they have anything to go anywhere, they're leaving. Take a look. This week, we saw that Dr. Emmanuel Moss is leaving the province. He got a job in Atlanta, and I congratulate him. He's a good guy. I know him well. I congratulate him on his job in Atlanta. I hope he's very successful. I hope his family's very happy in Atlanta. But he's a leading heart surgeon here in Montreal. He grew up in the city. He's lived in the city his whole life. He wanted to raise his kids in the city, but he got a job opportunity and didn't even think twice about leaving because of the Jew hatred that he didn't want his kids to face. How sad is that? That we're living in a world, we're living in a country where the top people are leaving because they can't bear the hatred in the street. They can't bear it. I'll be honest with you. If I got a good job opportunity outside of Quebec, I would leave too. Because there's really no reason to be staying here anymore. And I've said this before on the show. This is not the first time I've said this on the show. That when they allow people to stand in the street and call for my death, it's a good indication for me to go. It's a real good indication that I'm no longer welcome here. That perhaps my visit has come to an end. Now, I hate to say it. I really hate to say it. I've built a nice life here. But do you really want to take the chance? When you watch your institutions become fortresses, when you have more security at your synagogue than Fort Knox has, does it really make sense to want to live in life like this? I don't think it does. When synagogues are being indiscriminately bombed, when children are being attacked on the street, when schools are being shot at, and I can tell you firsthand the effect of a school being shot at is. The school that I work at was shot at twice. And I can tell you firsthand the reaction of the children, the reaction of the parents, and the fear that still exists 2 years later. Yet we continue. We're resilient. We have to continue. Life can't freeze. Life can't stop. We can't live in one moment. But the unfortunate part is that moment keeps repeating itself. So there was a time where you would say, okay, this happened, isolated incident, let's move on. But when you start seeing the pattern, when you start understanding that there is a pattern, when you start getting that your safety is constantly in jeopardy, when you start understanding that, then you start thinking, is it really worth it? Is it worth my life? And you make up your mind. You make your life decisions based on that. I don't know if it's worth it. I really don't. But is going to Israel any better? Northern Israel currently, right now, is under attack. Iran is launching missiles into northern Israel. The people of northern Israel are now living in bomb shelters. Not a condemnation from anybody. You have a country launching missiles indiscriminately into civilian territory. When Israel was accused of doing that, the entire world attacked Israel. The entire media attacked Israel. Yet here we have a situation, and this continuously happens in Israel, where bombs are indiscriminately launched into civilian population. Bombs are indiscriminately launched into innocent men, women, and children with the intention of killing innocent men, women, and children. And the world remains silent because, like I said before, Jewish lives don't really matter. They don't matter to the Canadian government. They definitely don't matter to the world. And because they don't matter, because Jews don't matter, any country, you had Gaza launching bombs indiscriminately into Israel, into southern Israel, for over a decade before October 7th. You have Iran, the Houthis, anybody with a missiles launching it into Israel, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, anybody who has a missiles launching it into Israel. And not at military installations. They're launching it into civilian population, which is a war crime, but it's not treated like a war crime when it's Israel. It's not treated as a war crime when it's killing Jews, because it's an unwritten rule, a gentleman's agreement, if you don't mind this saying, that if it's Jews, it's fine. We could kill Jews. Nobody cares. I'm Howie Silbiger. This is the Howie Silbiger Show right here on the True Talk Radio Network. You could feel free to get in on the conversation. Number to call, 1-877-669-1292. That's 1-877-669-1292. And the worst part about the whole thing is that if Israel fights back, and when Israel fights back, the only one getting condemned is Israel. So here you have bombs indiscriminately being launched into the Israeli civilian population. The Israeli government's responsibility is to protect their population. That's their job. It's the job of every government to protect their population. The entire first half of the show I spent yelling at the Canadian government saying, you're not protecting your population. And because that's your responsibility. That's the responsibility of every government, is protect your population. It's make sure the people living in your country are safe. That's your job. And when the Israeli government does their job and goes to take out terrorists, does their job and says, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to allow bombs to indiscriminately fall on the heads of our civilians. When they do that, they're called genociders. They're called committing a genocide. Oh, you're committing a genocide. Israelis are not allowed to protect themselves. Every other country in the world could protect themselves, but not Israel. Nope. Jews can't protect themselves. Everyone loves a dead Jew. It makes a good story. It makes a good museum. Nobody loves a strong Jew. That's really the problem we have here. And when the Jews show their strength and the Jews fight back, oh, that's terrible. How could the Jews do that? Who gives the Jews the right to fight back? Bombs are landing on Israeli heads. Donald Trump told Bibi Netanyahu, don't respond. What do you mean, don't respond? What kind of advice is that? Don't respond. Same advice that Yitzhak Shamir got from George H.W. Bush during the first Gulf War, when bombs were launched into Israel. Don't respond. And when Shamir said, I'm going to respond, there's no way I could sit back and allow missiles to land in my country, they threatened Israel with $30 million of loan guarantees that Israel couldn't afford to pay back. So Israel had to back down. They showed a weakness, and that weakness has dogged Israel ever since. That weakness has killed Israel. Because one thing about Arab philosophy, one thing about Arab mentality, especially in the Middle East, is don't show them you're weak. You give them a weakness, and they got you. They'll exploit it. I'm Howie Silbiger. It's the Howie Silbiger Show. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you again next show.